When he turned his back from shoulder to shoulder, it looked like as wide as the tailgate of a truck.
And just darkness, literal darkness, just came like all over, just all over me except where I was standing.
This thing let out the most blood-curdling, mind-blowing, spine-tingling scream that you've ever heard in your life, and it cut through me like a knife.
And I knew that they were going to take me. I just knew it. And then the next thing I can remember is being levitated.
Well, when I look in there, I see two big eyes staring back at me.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night. Hey there, believers. I got another good episode for you today. I'm going to bring on Jason. He's got several stories he wants to share with us, and he actually has his own podcast. He hasn't posted anything in a couple of months, which is a real shame because he's a good host. He's a great host. He even was nice enough to bring me on his show. His podcast is called Time Will Tell, and it's a genealogy and ancestry podcast. And he gave me the opportunity to come on and talk about the Hatfields and McCoys, the Hatfield side I'm directly related to. And I got to share a little bit about that. And then we got into a little bit of paranormal talk. But just a second, I'll go ahead and bring him on the show. I have a little bit of downtime today for the next week, really, because I'm in quarantine again. At the time of recording this, my wife is COVID positive. She's actually self-isolated, and I'm in the other end of the house in my office again, sleeping in my hammock for another week. I tested this morning, and as of now, I'm still negative. So, but she just can't catch a break. You know, she, like I said, from the time this is being recorded, 1 week ago today, she had her surgery for her gallbladder and appendix. And again, I thank you guys for all the prayers and support. When she come home from the hospital, she felt like her allergies were killing her, like she had a head cold. And then within 4 days, you know, she's got COVID. So keep her in her thoughts and prayers. Hopefully by the time this airs, she'll be back on her feet and, you know, up and running again, doing her 4 and 5 miles a day. So thank you guys. And just hold on a second. I'll go ahead and bring Jason on.
All right. Yeah, I'm Jason, and I'm the host of the podcast Time Will Tell, and I haven't put an episode out in a while because I've been traveling a lot of like driving different places, and I didn't have my equipment, and I didn't want to just rely on the phone quality, and you know how that goes. You want to put out a better product, and you just don't want it to be crappy. So yeah, I've been behind. I'm getting ready to start that back up because I did take a trip to Ohio to meet my family. And so I guess probably I should say that my podcast is about family history, genealogy, those kind of stories, and how DNA stories can change your life, and how people can find adoption, their adopted, or, you know, their biological families if they're adopted, different things like that. So, but for this podcast, I'm calling back stories of, especially when I was a kid. So I don't know where you want me to start at, or if you want me to start just off the bat, or how you want me to do it.
Well, whatever is easier for you. You know, if you want to go chronologically or whatever, that works for me. But before you start, Jason, let me tell you, on Ancestry DNA, I got a hit. I got an email that said that they found through DNA a second cousin of mine.
Wow,
that's pretty close.
That's close.
And I have never heard of this lady, and she had never heard of me. And we're sending emails back and forth now, trying to connect the dots.
Yeah. So that's fun. That's how it happens. So
yeah, I was like, second cousin. That has to be like really
That's
close.
very
That should be like an
close.
uncle's kid, you know?
Yeah.
So
At most, I think it could be like your great grandparents may have been siblings. I think, if I
okay.
have that right.
Well, see, you know this stuff better than I do. So yeah, we're digging into surnames right now. I'll keep you posted
Yeah,
on it. But yeah,
definitely.
yeah, go ahead, man. Let's hear it.
Okay. Well, I like to think of it like as a weird thing, and I'll also mention something else about the DNA stuff as I go along through this. But my mom says when I was a baby, just I don't even know, probably not even a year old, that her and this guy were traveling, or just not really traveling, but everywhere's traveling when you live in the country, so it's like everything's far apart. So they're on the way to wherever they were going, and they saw a very bright light in the sky, and it was following them. And so that was kind of the beginning, I guess, of what I call paranormal type stuff in my life, because I was just a baby at the time. But she said it was just weird, it was strange. They definitely knew that it was something. This was in the 70s, so it was like 76 probably. And so she said she knew it was just something weird. I was born in the Ozarks, lived in the Ozarks for a while. And so this happened in the Ozarks, just out in the Ozarks and the country, nowhere there's usually a light around like that in the sky. And then as I grew, and I could remember just always hearing stories like my mom had a sister who passed away when she was 6. And I remember the story of my grandpa. He was my step grandpa. He would say that one night she came in and was playing with his toes. So, and to me, I grew up thinking nothing about this story. Like, there's nothing weird about this.
Right.
I'm thinking, I just heard it so much. And then as I begin to listen to different podcasts, I'm like, this isn't really a normal thing to hear. You don't, it's not normal to hear that somebody who's passed came in and played with their toes, but it was just something that had been told. And, over and over again, the story I'd heard. And as I was telling you earlier, when we were just talking, that I don't have a frame of reference, especially when I was little, for horror. I wasn't allowed to watch anything horror related or scary or anything like that. So I didn't have a big reference for horror or just things that were scary in general. Maybe the Scooby-Doo show was about as scary as it got for me. And but there were many times at night I would lay in bed and be terrified. I wasn't asleep. I had not been asleep yet. So it's not something that I woke up and saw. It's not something that, I try to think about it as I was growing up, and then when I started hearing about sleep paralysis and different things like this, I'm like, no, I haven't been asleep during this time. I was wide awake. And I slept on a bunk bed. I was on the top, my sister was on the bottom. And so I would see shadow, I now call them shadow people. I didn't know what to call them then. But listening to podcasts now, I think that I would call them shadow people. There was no definition to them, no face, no features I could make out, but they were just black. And they would be there. And one of them, and like I said, I had no reference for horror, and so these are different things I saw. Like, I saw the neighbor. It looked like I don't know how I knew it was the neighbor lady, because like I said, there's no features.
Right.
But in my mind as a kid, I'm thinking, this is the neighbor lady. And she was like a 70-something-year-old woman. She was a great. I played at her house all the time. Helped her feed the chickens and helped all this kind of stuff. So I was over there a lot. But so I knew that in my mind, I guess, that this was her, and she had an axe. And like I said, you can't see this, but it's like a black figure. But I knew what it was. It's just like I knew what it was. And so, but every time it would happen, like if I would see a black shadow figure in the room, I would try to scream, and I just couldn't. I'd try to scream for my mom, and I couldn't get anything to come out. I couldn't scream, or I'd be too afraid to. I'd just be like, if I scream, and I'm going to get killed, or something's going to happen to me. or my sister. And so I would just not say anything, and I would be scared. And then finally I would, a lot of times I'd finally get up the nerve to yell out to my mom, and she would come check. And of course, she wouldn't see anything. And so it was just crazy. But,
That would be terrible.
and then oh yeah, especially like I said, I had no reference for horror. I had not watched anything horror related or anything like that. So for me, it's just like I must have an either very vivid imagination, which I don't think was the case because I borrowed my sister's imaginary friend. I didn't even come up with my own. So I don't think it was just my vivid imagination running away with me, but it was just strange. And then I don't remember, maybe I was 8 to 10 years old or so. I would be outside, and the street that I lived on, the city had put a load of gravel at the end because it was just a dirt road, and they were going to put some gravel on it. And I would go out there and sit on top of that gravel pile and play. I'd throw rocks, or I'd play, and a lot of times I'd be by myself. Yeah. And there was nowhere around that thing to hide. Nowhere. There was nowhere that anyone could have been close to me that I would not have seen them. And as I was sitting there, someone said my name, Jason. And it sounded like they were right beside me. And I kind of looked around and I'm like, who said my name? And I just freaked out and ran inside. I ran inside the house. I don't even remember if I told my mom or not, but it just freaked me out. And then there was another time, still not probably, I don't know how long it was between the times that this happened, because as a kid, you're not really keeping track of that. But I was at someone's house and I was playing with the dog outside. There were trees there around. So, there could have technically have been a place someone could have stood behind, but the trees weren't big trees. I would have seen somebody if they were trying to hide there. And this was a man's voice. It wasn't a child's voice. It wasn't anything else, but it was a man's voice. And they said, again, my name, Jason. And I was like, this is just freaking me out. And I don't remember even what the dog did. I was trying to think because a lot of times animals have that sense. Right. And so I don't even remember what the dog had done. I was trying so bad to remember, like, how did the dog react? How did the dog act? Because for me, I was just scared. Just somebody said my name and I know there's nobody there. Right. And so again, I take off back into the house, scared. And then it happened to me a third time. I was just walking across my yard. There was no trees around, nowhere for anyone to hide. And it was just right beside me again. Somebody said my name plainly as day. It's just a man's voice said Jason. And the weird thing about it, and I went over to my neighbors, like I told you, she was a sweet old lady, and she had one son that she had adopted, didn't have any grandkids. So she was like everybody's grandma in the neighborhood. She loved all the kids. And so I went over there, and I think me and my sister both were there. And she was telling the story because I told her about it. And she was telling me a story in the Bible. I think it was Samuel, who heard his name called. And I was like, okay. So then, and I thought, well, maybe that's something like that, but the only thing I had as a reference for anything ever happening like that was that story. Right. And then one day we were over there and someone called her name. Her name was Goldie. And me, my sister, and her heard it, and we went outside because we thought maybe somebody knocked and then just took off or something. But we went all around the house. We went everywhere looking for someone that could. And the road was a dead end street. So, and she lived at the very end. So we would have had to seen them trucking off down the road, if they had been there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but this man's voice, did it sound like the same voice every time?
Yeah, for me it did. It sounded like the same person. But there was no like feeling in it. It was almost like there was no feeling in the voice. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. It was just like saying Jason, just plain like there was nothing behind it, no feeling, no anything, but just saying my name.
Yeah.
And then her name.
That's freaky as hell, man. I'll be honest with you, because
it is,
especially when you're a kid,
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like,
It's
was she like your next door neighbor?
Yeah, she was right next door. She taught me to plant a garden. I helped her with her chickens. I almost burned her house down. But
Well,
uh,
it sounds like there must be something or someone lingering around that property,
yeah,
maybe.
it felt like, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's the Ozarks. It's old area.
Oh, yeah. The
Yeah.
Ozarks, that takes me back to the episode number 5 I did in
Yeah.
season 1 with Dennis and Ashley.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Ozarks, pretty weird place, I guess.
Yeah. It can be for sure.
Yeah, with the shadow people and hearing the voices.
Mhm.
Did I know you mentioned to me before, we picked up the recording again about people being on the Ouija board. Now, does all this stuff predate the Ouija board experiences?
Yeah, that predates that.
Okay. Do you know of anybody that dabbled in that kind of stuff on the property? Like, did your parents or grandparents get into?
No.
No.
No, if anybody had even found out that I touched one, I probably would have been, my butt would have been whooped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's a big no, like, no, that, and nobody I knew would have had one near the property.
Wow. Well, it sounds like it's definitely something going on.
Yeah, it was very strange and weird, and like I said, as a kid, just terrifying, especially when I had no reference. Like I don't like, how's my mind coming up with this as the way I think of it? Like how does my mind, because I've tried to think, maybe my mind just made this up. Maybe I've, but I didn't. It really happened, and I tried to explain it to myself my whole life in different ways. Like, how could this have happened? What, when was the wind and this, and I'm like, no, but I heard it plainly. So
Tom does that to people. Tom makes us feel like maybe we're not remembering it right.
Yeah.
Or we try to excuse it away, or maybe it was just a dream, or maybe it was our imagination, but it wasn't. If it was real in that moment, it's still real today. You know what I mean?
And then, speaking of dreams, that is the most terrifying thing that happened to me as a kid. I would have this recurring dream, and it makes me feel weird just thinking about it, even because I don't really even think about this dream or talk about it ever, hardly ever. And but in this dream, there would be invisible beings. I don't know if they were people. I don't know what they were. They were invisible. I could not see them, and they would drag me. They would drag me by the feet or by the arm, but they were dragging me. And I never could remember in the dream where we went or what was happening. I just remember being dragged and it terrifying me. Oh, it was the most terrifying dream ever. It's the most terrifying experience. And it would bother me for a long time after I would have the dream. Just for days, I'd be like, even now, it just amazes me how it makes me feel to talk about it. But it was just, I don't know. It was, and like I said, again, I have no frame of reference, nothing to make me think of this, nothing to plant into my mind any kind of thing like from a horror movie or anything like that. So there's nothing there that was planted into my mind to dream these things or to make them up, but it was terrifying.
Was it a recurring dream? Did it happen often?
Yeah, it was a recurring dream. It happened a lot when I was a kid. I think as I got older, and I quit having the dream, but it was definitely a recurring dream, and it would scare me to death because I would, like I said, I'd be being dragged, by some invisible creature. I didn't know what it was, and I don't know where they were taking me. I don't remember anything because at some point I would just wake up and I wouldn't remember anything.
Not to make it worse, but I've heard people make connections with these kind of things to UFO abduction experiences.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of when I even think about it.
Because with the UFO following your car when you were a kid, when a baby, and then you're growing up hearing your name being called, seeing shadow people at night, and then you have these dreams, quote unquote dreams, of being dragged away. I hate to but man alive, that sounds like it could all be connected.
Believe me, it's crossed my mind before. It's definitely
broke up a little bit.
that, but it crosses your mind. You can't help it. Like you said, it's just especially when you hear about these things and listen to podcasts like your podcast or other people's podcasts, and I hear these stories from other people, and I'm like, but for the longest time, I try to tell myself, oh, my story isn't that interesting. It's not that whatever. Nobody will want to hear about that. That's not anything big or, but then sometimes when you sit and really think about it, you're like, and you try to put together all the pieces.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is that as I got older, it became less. I didn't have those experiences as much.
Right.
There is one memory, and I told my mom about this not long ago. I said, do you know of any place in the woods that was like a dome-shaped house or building, and there was like, I said, and that had like vines growing on it. I said that may have, that we may have been known in the area, somewhere.
Yeah.
She's like, that doesn't, like, no, I don't know where that would be. She said, unless you were with your dad at the time, and he took you somewhere. She said, but I don't know, because I have this vivid memory of a building in the woods that's just covered, it's like a dome-shaped building, is covered with, a lot of it is covered with these growing vines.
Right.
And I can remember going inside and there being nothing but maybe a table and a chair in there.
Wow.
And it just, I can remember the lighting. I can remember, so much of the place. And it seems like such a vivid memory. But then again, I'm like, is this a memory? Was this a dream? Was this, I don't know. I can't recall it enough to know what it was. If it was something real, if it was something I dreamed or what. But it's stuck with me. And I don't know why that one place has stuck with me so much throughout my life.
And of course, it's dome shaped.
Yeah.
Like the top half of a UFO, Jason.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm sitting here, when I'm looking down, I'm taking notes. It's all knotted up together. I'm like, uh-oh. This all sounds really sketchy,
Yeah. But for me, like I said, I didn't, for the longest time, didn't put any pieces together to think that these experiences may have even been together. And even till when I was talking to you today, I still didn't really put a lot of it together.
Yeah.
Until we were talking just now, and you begin to say that, I'm like, whoa, wait, no.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to go down some of that road,
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Because it's a freaky experience.
Have you had any UFO experiences as an adult? Like, do you ever see them? Do you see strange lights or?
There was one thing that I can't explain. I don't know. It was over 10, 15 years ago. I was driving down the road. There were other people in the car with me, and they all saw it too. But there was a light in the sky that was very low, and it had like, I don't know, it seemed like it was just hovering for a little bit, and then it moved. And then it just, but it could have been anything. It could have been a helicopter of some sort. It just didn't seem natural to me, or to anyone in the car. Yeah. It looked weird. We thought it was out of the normal, that's why we remembered it. That's why we talked about it, because it just didn't seem normal.
Well, what color was it?
I don't even remember. It was just a light. I can remember a light, and it seemed like maybe there was some other smaller lights near it, like around it. I can't remember, honestly, and I'm afraid to say because I don't want it to be not true.
No, I get that.
Yeah. I just remember a bright light, for sure.
Well, let me ask another question that might sound kind of far off or grasping straws or trying to make something that's not there. Do you have any marks on your body you don't remember how you got, like any scars or
I don't think I do. I don't think well, there's a weird place on my head, that's like it won't grow hair. Like it's like this place here, and it's like a big circle area right here. It just won't grow hair.
huh.
That's the only thing that's weird on me that I can remember.
Yeah.
But then there was also another time. This was when I was a teenager, and we had just moved here to Alabama, and we were looking for a place. And there was this. I mean, we're just looking. We spent a lot of time looking for a place to live, and because we were renting a house. And I think my parents had read about one in the paper, and we were going to go look at it the next day. And that night, I had a dream about a house. And in my dream, I was walking around the house on the outside. And as I came around the right side of the house, on the back side, on the corner, there was a head hanging. And still at this point, I still haven't watched a lot of scary stuff. I had watched maybe a few things, but nothing really horror related. Right. But there was a head hanging on the house, and it was decaying, and there's like ants all over it. It freaked me out big time. It was disgusting. It freaked me out. It bothered me for weeks.
Right.
Because the next day we went to see the house. It was the house of my dreams.
Oh, hell.
It was that house.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Yeah. And I was like, no, I tried to tell him, I'm like, no, I dreamed about this house. And I told him the dream that I had. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, this is too weird. It was way too weird. And I'm like, this is the house that was in my dream. Because I at first I didn't even tell anybody about it because it just really bothered me, and it was just so gruesome and gross. Right. But then when we went to the house and it was that house, I was like, I told them about the dream then. Yeah. And then, but the thing is, someone else bought the house, and then my grandmother and her sister ended up moving into it to take care of an elderly woman. In that house, there was something in that house. Yeah. I know there was something in that house. It was, and my grandmother was a super Christian lady. She did not lie. She was like, if there's anybody that made it to heaven, it would have been her. Like she's like, I don't know anybody else that could have made it if she didn't. Right. And so, but she told me, and she told all of us, she told everybody, that was there. She said, I felt one night something crawl up in bed with me. She said, but I just prayed. She said, I just laid there and prayed, until it went away. But she said it crawled up into the bed with her. She could feel it. She said she felt the weight of it on the bed. She felt everything. And it crawled in the bed with her. And she said that when she would go, a lot of times when she'd go to the bathroom or whatever, that the sink would turn on by itself and the water would come on. And like I said, for me, I'm like, my grandma's telling me this. It's the God's honest truth. Like, this is gospel, like, right? No, this is the gospel because my grandma said it. And and so then me and my cousins, we were like, oh yeah, we are going to stay the night over here. We want to see, like, what are we going to see? Are we going to see a ghost? Is this going to happen? And because at that time we were like really into trying to find ghosts, Oh yeah. And so then you're really looking for it. Maybe it's really you're going to find it, or maybe your mind's going to take things and try to run away with it and make something bigger than it is. But I was staying there. I had another cousin. He was a few days older than me. He was staying there. And another cousin a year or two older. He was staying there. And then my grandma was in her room, and my aunt and her daughter, my other cousin, were in my aunt's bedroom. And then I had one cousin in the living room on the couch, and me and my other cousin were in the den, and we were on couches in there. And we could all talk and hear each other. And so we were all just kind of talking back and forth. And then the bathroom door shut and the light came on. And so my cousin, my aunt's bedroom was right next to the bathroom. And then my one cousin that was in there with her mom, she said, my other cousin, his name's James, she goes, James, you get out of there. Stop playing around. And then he's like, I'm in here. He was right next to me, like on the couch across the room from me. And then the other cousin, he was still in the living room. Grandma was in the bedroom, and those two were in there. And to this day, I don't know Like, I don't even remember, like, did anybody get up to check the bathroom? Did
Probably
anybody open the door? Like, did we just wait till morning? I don't remember. But and then I remember being in the shower there one time, taking a shower, and the way it was is there was an apartment on the back side of the house, but it was being renovated and there was nobody in it. There was nobody back there. And so I was in the shower and I could hear voices on the other side of the wall talking, but there was no one there. There was nobody back there working. There was nobody at the house but me and my grandma and my aunt at the time. And, you know, we were the only ones there, but there were definitely, like, I couldn't make out what they were saying, but you could just tell there were voices talking. It freaked me out and I got out of the bed. I'm like, I'm done with the shower. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. Now,
So yeah, but yeah, but in between there is where I had the other experiences that I was telling you about.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Was it that about the time, or was that after the?
No, that was after the Ouija board experience stuff. That was after that. That was in a different state because my stepdad was in the Navy and we were living in Florida when that happened. And I mean, you know, when all the Ouija board stuff happened. But so I'll kind of talk about that.
Yeah.
So my cousins, they were into that kind of stuff, and they had talked about it before, and they had seen all the horror movies, and they were just really into that horror stuff. And me, I still wasn't into that, and I didn't, you know, like I said, I wasn't allowed to watch it. There was a girl I went to school with. Her grandpa lived across the street from my house, and she was big into, like, she wanted to be a witch. She was like, you know, big into horror stuff. She was a weirdo. She was just completely out there weird. Everybody at school, I mean, she was the person at school everybody made fun of.
Yeah.
And looking back, you know, people bullied her a lot, and for being different, for being strange in a way. But she talked to silverware. I mean, you know, she would talk to forks and different things like that. So yeah, I mean, you know, maybe she had a bit of a mental illness. I don't know. At that time, we didn't, you know, people didn't think about those things. They just made fun of people for being different. And I look back and I always think, I wish, you know, maybe I'd been nicer to her. But I mean, I was probably one of the nicest people to her in class. She'd come over to my house and play.
Right.
And so, anyway, she had the drawing of a Ouija board on her wall. She drew it herself on the wall at her house. And so, I mean, this is how much she's into it. And she was going to spend the night with my sister one night. And I don't know, there was some horror movie that was going to be on. And she wanted to watch it, but mom's like, no, I don't allow that in my house. The girl was crawling on her hands and knees down the hallway, looking at my mom, you know, like... And my mom's like, you need to go back to bed. You need to go back to bed. You know, like, no. She wanted to go in there and watch the movie, and she's like, no. She's like, I don't allow those in my house. Okay. Well, I don't know what happened. Us and the neighbors, we had, like, I don't know if it was a piece of cardboard, what it was, but we made like a little makeshift Ouija board because they had all talked about it, and I was interested. I'm like, yeah, what, you know, what's the deal? You know, I didn't believe it. I'm like, no, this is just somebody that'll move this. I don't think it was like some little ball bearing type thing we used for the planchette. You know, it was like some little thing from a bike. I don't know. And so it was, you know, they played around with it, and I was too scared to really touch it, but they done it at the house, you know, outside the house. And I don't know how long after that, but my mom, she was kind of freaking out a little bit one day. She's like, you know, I see this black figure standing, you know, it was like down, because in our house we had like a living room, and then there's the kitchen, and then a step down from the kitchen there was a den, and kind of like den dining room area. And she says, right down there, I always see it between the den and the dining, or between the kitchen and the dining room area. And so I was like, okay. You know, it just freaked us out, and I didn't really see it. But then one time my stepdad was home, and they were in the bedroom talking, and they got really scared. And I was like, what is it? They called my grandma to pray. They're like, we need to have her pray because they said we saw these black figures around the bed. And I'm like, no. Like, the light was on. They saw it with the light on. And like, no. So they called grandma to pray. And my mom was really upset about it and kind of freaking out about it.
Yeah.
But and I can remember just like the top, we had our refrigerator sitting there in the kitchen, and we had like a basket on top that had bread in it. And somehow the bread ended up out of the basket and into the floor, like into the middle of the floor. The basket wasn't turned over or anything else, but the bread was out of the basket and in the floor. And I don't know, that house was just, it felt very haunted to me, you know. I can remember. And then we had a crazy neighbor kid that was like threatening to kill us. He was 9 years old. He tried to burn our house down.
What?
And yeah, they'd been run out of another town because he almost burnt a guy in his trailer. And then he had like cut our screens in our house and stuck paper in there and just lit the paper on fire. And,
like for real, tried to burn you guys out.
Yeah, for real, tried to burn it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he would threaten me. He was outside with a meat cleaver chopping on a piece of wood and said, "Hey Jason, this is what I'm going to do to you, and then I'm gonna blank your sister." I'm like, "Well, this is a 9-year-old kid."
Yeah.
And yeah. So I don't. There was just like a lot of weird stuff in the area around there, and I'm like, no, it's just. He's probably Florida man now, I'm sure. You know, Florida man. I'm sure he's Florida man.
It sounds like it. He was already Florida boy right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, getting back to that Ouija board, I know you said you all made it out of, you know, cardboard and spare parts or something, but you know, I'm sure you know it's all about your intention, and you know, not
exactly.
The manufacturer. Parker Brothers, when they put out their Ouija board, that's cardboard. And I've had a couple of weird Ouija board experiences too, but I didn't start seeing shadow people, and now there's no way in hell I'd bring one in my house around here because
nope.
No, because this is my house.
Exactly.
I'm not having that. Man.
Yeah,
so,
it was definitely strange.
In your adult life, are you still seeing these shadow figures or having any kind of anything happen, or has things calmed down altogether for you?
You know, I don't see shadow figures per se. I sometimes, you know, just out of the corner of your eye, see things and think, well, maybe it was just, you know, you just kind of blow it off like, oh, whatever. And even this morning, I was taking my daughter to work because she had to go to work at like almost like 4:45. She was needing a ride to work. So I went to pick her up, and it was so weird because I was thinking about this today, and I was like, you know, I wasn't even thinking about it at the time, but I was driving, and then it looked like somebody ran toward the road. And I'm like, and in my mind, I could see, you know, the person looked like they had like a hospital gown on.
Oh my God.
And it looked like a lady with long kind of white hair. And but as I got up closer, I'm like, you know, this is so weird because the place where I saw it happen was right by the nursing home. It was like, but there was nobody out there. You know, there was nobody outside. Of course, it was dark and there was nobody there. And but that's where I seen it, and I thought, well, maybe it was just something. You just kind of blow it off, like, just my eyes playing tricks on me. It's early in the morning, and just something weird. Yeah, just a ghost.
That's all. Just a ghost of an old lady in a nursing home. That's all.
Yeah. But I do see sometimes things out the corner of my eye that are unexplainable, I guess you'd say. Like it looks like somebody's standing there. And then there's also I don't know, it's hard to explain, like a sense maybe.
Yeah.
Like a feeling, you know, just a weird feeling, like, you know, something is not right. Like there's something maybe around, you know, like that doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to explain. But I don't have that often. I don't have, you know, it was less as I got older. And I don't know, I think just maybe when I got older, things began to be explained by the church that I went to, like oh, that's just demons or that's the devil, and just need to pray if you feel something like that or see anything, just pray. And so it's like, so I guess you begin to think of it more in a spiritual warfare type of sense.
Yep.
And maybe less, well, I mean, it's still paranormal because it's not normal, but you don't think of it sometimes in those terms, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely strange. My sister, she's the same. She'll see things every once in a while. When my oldest nephew was little, they lived in this house, and she said that she saw an old woman. She said, I've seen her many times in that house. She said, I'd see her reflection in the TV. I'd seen her in the house. She said, my little boy's seen her. And like they'd see an old woman in that house. She would never speak to them or anything like that, but they would just see her there.
Yeah.
And she said it was almost like she was watching over them, kind of.
And see, that's the thing. That's kind of stuff I'm trying to figure out. And I ask a lot of people when they come on here to talk to me, why does it seem like some people are still here? Is there, I believe in my heart, like you said, spiritual warfare and stuff like that. I think there's angels and demons fighting among us all the time.
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
really do. But then you see grandmas,
yeah,
or little kids, and now are those truly them? Are those are they allowed to come visit? Are they still going on in a dimension we just don't get to see very often? Or are those demons trying to play tricks on us? Like I got so many questions. And
that's me. I've got questions about it too, because like you said, sometimes you see grandmas and little kids or whatever. And the thing that always I question in my mind too is that everybody sees ghosts. They always look like they're from the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Like, how come we don't see ghosts in like leg warmers and 80s attire? We don't see those. It's like always like the early 1900s.
Yeah, it's like everybody.
It's like maybe that's
yeah.
What happened at that time that made people stay? Maybe is it something that happened during that time period that was just people can't pass over, or people, I don't know. I question these things sometimes. I mean, and now that I'm going to be working graveyard shift, I'm going to be doing a lot of listening to podcasts, and I'll be questioning a lot more.
Good deal, man. Well, I didn't know you were sitting on all these stories. We've kept in touch for a while now. Since you let me come on your show. Yeah. And I had no clue you had whatever experiences you want to lump this into.
Well, like I said, for me, I don't like thinking about the stories. I'm like, nobody will be interested in that. It's just a little this and that or whatever. And so you think, nobody will be interested in that. And maybe somebody will be. Maybe somebody else has experienced it.
Yeah, these stories make for some of the best stories because they're so relatable.
Yeah.
Like the students I have, anytime, and it happens frequently because they're nosy kids. They like to know about my show and stuff like that. Or I just can't keep my mouth shut and I'll bring it up myself. You know what I mean? Or they'll see a decal on my coffee mug or something.
Yeah.
But it's like every kid in there has a story that they saw something, or mom and dad saw something, or grandma talked about this thing that came in the backyard, and everybody's got a story. So as you might not feel like they are that big of a deal, but you talking about it will help somebody else talk about it,
Yeah.
And then we can,
and like I said, and like I said too, there was another thing I wanted to mention about the DNA stuff, because, and I think I've told you about this before.
Yeah.
But I found out later in life that the man I thought was my dad wasn't my dad. And so through DNA, ancestry DNA, I found that out. And so when I found out who my dad was, and I searched for him on Facebook, I've always had this interest in the paranormal things like aliens, Bigfoot, I've always had that interest. And so when I found my biological dad on Facebook, his profile picture was aliens.
Nice.
And he makes these little wooden things that look like Bigfoot. He makes them and sells them and stuff. So yeah, so I'm like, this is too weird.
But there you
You know,
go.
that this is like, I've never met this man in my life, and we share these same interests
Yeah.
of the paranormal and things like this. And the funny thing being, and now that you said all this stuff about aliens and abductions, like I'm like, and his picture was aliens.
maybe he knows something.
Maybe there's a connection.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know. Well, Jason, it's been
That's-
so fun having you on here, man. It's good catching up with you.
yeah, I've enjoyed it. And like I said, maybe somebody will, maybe they'll understand these stories. Maybe they'll have something to say about them, because like I said, for me, until you even started kind of drawing lines together there, it didn't really click with me that they could be related.
Yeah.
But so that's something I'll probably be thinking about. I'm sure.
Well,
I'll think about that a lot more.
I hope it doesn't freak you out, but if you ever get into regression therapy, just holler at me.
Oh
Let
my
me know how
gosh.
it goes.
Yeah, like that scares me there.
Me too, man. But yeah, if you get your show back on the road, let me know.
Soon I'm gonna be getting it done.
I'll be watching for it. I love Time Will Tell. That was
Awesome.
my go-to show, man. And then you've been making me go with
Yeah.
that. But you've been all
I
over the
know,
world.
I've got to get back at it. Yeah,
You've been at
I'm getting
internet-
back at it. I recorded some things when I was there in Ohio visiting my family, ways I was feeling about that, and so I'm trying to make that into a show now. I'm also trying to find more guests who have stories about genealogy, interesting characters in their genealogy, or DNA stories, or another avenue I'm thinking of going down is genealogy, and people seeing their relatives, their dead relatives, or kind of like a paranormal grasp on that same thing too.
Yeah.
So if people got those kind of stories, hit me up, find me,
Well,
talk to me.
How can they find you? Where if people want to get on your show, how can they get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me on any of the social media at Time Will Tell PC. So that's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Time Will Tell PC. And they can also email me at jasonhall7594@gmail.com. And they can also go to the website and do the contact me there, which is www.timewilltellpc.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Please stay in touch with me. Holler at me when this is over with.
Oh, I will.
Good deal, man. Good. Thanks, Jason.
Have me on.
Hey, anytime.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Later, brother.